it is rare when all the readings really work almost perfectly well together, and I think this at first seems that it doesn't, but I think it produces it actually in the end. What I'm saying is that the first and second reading, even the psalm that's sandwiched between them, all are saying the same thing. It's talking about, through Isaiah, a prophecy of God that he's going to send a Messiah and everything is going to change. He talks about Israel that was in need of vindication, and the vindication was going to come. And then God speaks through the prophet and says things like this: "You shall be a glorious crown in the hand of the Lord, a royal diadem held by your God." And he says, "No more shall people refer to you as forsaken and desolate. You shall be called my delight, my espoused." And it talks about Israel becoming a bride of God. What a glorious reading. And the second reading to Corinthians talks about the powerful gift of the Spirit being poured all over the church, and says that God, who does all these works, will do them in you, and gives so many gifts. And then this list comes out, this faith by the Spirit, gifts of healing by the Spirit, mighty deeds by the Spirit, prophecies by the Spirit, discernment of spirits, varieties of tongues, and interpretations of tongues. And this will be poured all over the church. And then the psalm, we kept singing this response: "Proclaim his marvelous deeds to all the nations." So those readings, they express the same thing in very powerful language. But then this gospel comes along that's kind of strange at first and needs a little tweaking to figure it out. This is one of two times that Mary really appears prominently in the gospel. Here at the very beginning of the ministry of Jesus, in the second chapter, very early in John, and then at the very end when she stands by the cross. So her prominence is really just in those two times. But they're at a wedding feast, and Mary notices that the wine is running low, so she turns to Jesus and says to him, "They have no wine." Okay. But then an extraordinary response from Jesus. Actually, I'm not even sure what it means. It must have been something in the language, and we lost its meaning, because how would Jesus say to her, "Woman, how does your concern affect me?" That sounds pretty rude to me. Woman. Can you imagine one of your children saying that, even if they're 20 or 30? Woman, excuse me, I'm your mother, hello. But that's what he says. But then he says this: "My hour has not yet come." And that's what this whole gospel is about, his hour. He's not talking about 60 minutes. He's talking about a time so important. Let me put it this way. Let's say you were a music star, or becoming a music star, and you went to this concert that you were giving, and you sang several songs and got wonderful, beautiful applause, but then you sang one song that has become your signature song. And for the first time, you realize it's your signature song. The crowd goes crazy. So they demand that you sing it again. Encore, encore, sing it again, and you do. And they go crazy. And you sing it a third time. And finally you realize, oh my God, this is my song forever now. And then years later you say, I'll tell you, my hour, the hour of my life was when I got up on stage and sang this song and repeated it 2 more times. And that's what Jesus is saying. It's not even one event. It's that, it's this, it's the ascension. All of that wrapped up is his hour. Not 60 minutes, indeed, but several events wrapped into one. And when he says that, I don't know if it meant anything to Mary or if she could possibly understand it. But then her response is just rich. We heard it in the introduction. Do whatever he tells you. Do whatever he tells you. And then this miracle happens, but John doesn't call these miracles. In his gospel, they're signs. And by the way, there's 7 of them. Hello, 7, the magic number, which means completion, perfection. Anytime you hear 7, pay attention. It's focusing on the most important. And the first sign he does, it seems like a rather strange sign, changes water into wine. But the details are what make it so beautiful. First of all, he tells them to fill these ordinary jugs that were used for washing the feet of the guests that came, a ceremonial washing. That didn't mean they put their foot in the water, they poured the water out over the feet of the people to clean them. Well, he said, fill them up. And the gospel says they filled them to the brim. Seems like a not important fact. Filled them to the brim. That means they were filled to the top, ready to overflow. One more drop could make them spill over. And that's what Jesus does. He does this most generous sign. Fill them to the brim. And then when they tasted it, it's extraordinary. And, if you're like me, you like good wine. And if you go to a party, give me some good wine, And they even note, usually you give the good wine at the beginning. And then when people, are kind of a little tipsy, give them the junk. But they did the opposite. They gave them the poor wine, and then they brought out the best. And Jesus saved the best for last, and then made an enormous amount of it, so generous, so as to bless everybody at this wedding feast. And wedding feasts were one of the great celebrations for families, especially in the Middle East. So this is how he revealed his glory. And it says the disciples began right there at that sign to believe in him. They saw something extraordinary going on, and they believed. Well, when you link that with the first reading and the second reading of the responsorial psalm, all the more powerful now. All these signs of God, his generous love, his generous gifting, his generous pouring out of the Spirit. And now comes the crucial issue. These are nice stories from the past, but are these our stories? And I say they are. This we read is for us right now. And do we believe that God has poured out his Spirit on each of us? He's anointed us. That theme keeps coming back in our liturgy. Do we believe that he has gifted each one of us with many gifts to serve one another, to serve the church, to serve the world? And here is a prominent moment in our time. What a catastrophic thing to happen in the last few weeks with these fires. Do you believe that if you know somebody whose house has burned down, or they've been cast out of their house for a few days, or they're the last house left on the block, what do you do with a piece of property like that? Everything around you is burned to the ground. Do you believe that God has gifted you with a golden tongue, that you could give them a call and give them hope or consolation? That a simple call, an invitation to dinner, a few bucks. When they've lost everything, a few bucks matters. And I really believe that. I'm not sure that we believe that. However, seeing beautiful signs of it, and it's sad that it takes a catastrophe like this, but it's also beautiful. One of my favorite comedians is Stephen Colbert. I watch him faithfully. And he said the other night as he asked people to give and put that little cue thing on the screen so they could put their camera up to that and give a donation. And he said, to date, this has raised 50 million people for the state of California. That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary. In a few nights, people would respond with so much love. But I get it. Who couldn't relate to losing everything that you have? Who couldn't relate to walking out of your house, running out of your house to freedom or to safety with only the clothes on your back? And who couldn't relate to the possibility of giving somebody a little hope by just giving them a call on their cell phone? That's what I think these scriptures are about today. And I think that Mary's words are they're prophetic and they're powerful. Do whatever he tells you. And what do you think he tells us? It's the same old story of Jesus. Love. Love one another as I've loved you. And today these scriptures come to life for us and in us, and I think give tremendous hope.